Welcome to Do Beautiful Things. I'm your host, Jenny Lawson, President and CEO of Keep America Beautiful. In this podcast, we'll discuss ending litter, the truth behind recycling, and making communities beautiful for people and for a more sustainable future. We'll be talking to industry experts, community leaders, and everyday people who want to do the right thing, including from time to time, my mother. Thank you for joining us. I hope you learned something, and I know I will. Welcome back to Do Beautiful Things. Keep America Beautiful is widely recognized for cleaning up litter, planting trees and flowers, and revitalizing neighborhoods. But our mission extends far beyond our appearance. It serves as a catalyst for creating healthier, safer, and more vibrant communities. In today's episode, we'll explore the power of trees through groundbreaking research from the University of Louisville, focusing on the crucial link between trees and heart health. This study is hands-on, and we're excited to hear about their initial findings. Let me introduce our guest for today, Dr. Bhatnagar. He is the Smith and Lucille Gibson Professor of Medicine and a distinguished university scholar. Dr. Bhatnagar has pioneered the field of environmental cardiology, exploring how environmental factors influence cardiovascular health and disease, and is the principal investigator of the Green Heart Louisville Project, which is the topic of our discussion today. Hi, Dr. Bhatnagar. Great to see you again.
Hi, Jenny. Thank you for your invitation to be here.
You and I met much earlier this year for the first time when you joined us out in San Diego for the Keep America Beautiful National Conference. And at that point, you had tantalizing indications of great results for the Green Heart Project. And I thought maybe we'd explore what came of those early conversations. But I thought it might be great for people to understand and get to know you a little better. So maybe start with telling us a little bit more about your background and maybe what first caught your attention in thinking of this initiative.
Yeah, so I am from a background of medical research and biomedical investigations, and I've been doing this for most of my career. I did my training in University of Texas Medical Branch in Galveston, it's a great town, and then moved to Louisville, where I have been for the last 25 years. And the focus of my work was to understand the basic mechanisms underlying heart disease. And so I was working on how the heart arrhythmias start when the electrical circuits of the heart go bad and then create all these problems and what we can do about that. And I was generally interested in heart disease. And so looking at the rates of heart disease around the country and now around the world, we see that there is this sort of continuous rise in the rates of heart disease. And so that was very troubling to me, that we are doing something in the lab that may or may not mean anything, and what can we do to prevent or at least to mitigate some of the burden of heart disease. So I started looking at what may be the most driving causes of heart disease. And then in the late 90s, we started studying the influence of the environment and looking. There was already a lot of literature how smoking and such could have caused heart disease, but we started looking at other exposures, particularly air pollution. And for the last 25 years, my research focus has been to understand how different types of air pollutants contribute to the risk of heart disease and different forms of heart disease, including tobacco and vaping and chemical exposures. So then the question then arose is, if there is all this burden because of inhaling toxic compounds, what can we do about that? And so we sort of narrowed into the idea that maybe creating healthier environments could be helpful in improving your heart health or and decreasing the risk of your heart disease. But there was very little known at that time, and so we launched into this Green Heart Project.
The environments and the things that people inhale, I assume, and we do sort of know this, that there's an economic divide between what someone who lives in an outer suburb or affluent area may inhale or be exposed to versus what happens in a more urban setting. Can you set up for us a little bit what some of those differences are?
Yeah, so the differences are rather stark. In most U.S. cities, there are places which have an inordinate burden of air pollution for several reasons. One is in most towns, these regions are next to factories and manufacturing facilities. In Louisville, we have something called the Rubber Town because this city was a major hub for making tires during the Second World War. And so we have a very large presence of the rubber industry here. Other cities have other industries. We also have, for historic reasons, redlined some areas of town which have been actually underserved in terms of any protection they might have from air pollution. Indeed, what has happened is they have taken these neighborhoods and transected freeways through the neighborhoods, dividing communities, separating one neighbor from the other, and creating a generally unconducive environment where these people living in their homes are exposed to traffic-generated air pollution. So most of the commercial districts and most of the underserved areas have high traffic through them. Whereas on the other end, we've created suburbs that are leafy and green and quiet and removed from much of traffic and noise of the city. So that's perpetuated these environmental differences and disparities.
And I would assume, and we also know this, that in the process of creating these manufacturing sectors and highways, the number one thing that happens is all of that is trees come down and pavement goes in. And so any sort of mitigating effect is removed from the environment in the process.
Yes. So as you well know, trees are very critical. I would say not just trees, but the entire green infrastructure is so helpful in decreasing the levels of pollutants and sequestering metals and other toxins and decreasing temperature and noise and light pollution. So there are all these benefits. And, fundamentally, you work for Keep America Beautiful, fundamentally, it is an aesthetic argument as well. That if you live in a place that you like and love and you are comfortable in, then your risk of heart disease goes down just as a default because you feel more at home and there's a more sense of belonging. Whereas if you live in a neighborhood that is hostile and you are insecure and you have to be looking out your back all the time, then you are under constant stress, and that has a bearing upon your heart. Right? So that's a big difference.
Absolutely. So set up the experiment for us. What is the Green Heart Project all about?
So given this background, that we have high levels of pollutions in neighborhoods, which are transected by freeways, which have been traditionally underserved and have lower, so to speak, socioeconomic status and low tree canopy. We thought that maybe we can experiment and add green infrastructure, trees and shrubs, to be able to test whether trees do indeed offer health benefits. So to step back a little, there has been a lot of evidence that people who live in green areas are healthier, they have lower risk of heart disease, lower rates of mortality, they report better mental health, lower levels of anxiety, and so on. But the people who live in green spaces, as you point out, are also richer, they have better access to medical care, they have greater means. So it is very difficult to tease apart the beneficial health effects of greenness from the place where this greenness occurs, right? So we thought, wow, the one way to separate it is to take a community that is underserved and low greenery, and then we plant trees there to see if we can prevent the exposure to air pollution, and at the same time be able to improve the health of the people. So this was not a simple sort of project. We have to first find a neighborhood that was sort of transected by a freeway. We had an area that we call the target area, surrounded by a cluster of neighborhoods we call controlled neighborhoods. And then we wanted to plant trees in the actual target neighborhoods and not in the controlled neighborhoods, and compare after that what happened to the health of the community and to the levels of pollutants in that area upon planting.
And so what was the result?
So first, what we did, we went and we did about 500 to 700 in-person exams of people. And these people, we measured their blood pressure, heart rate, cholesterol levels, their sugar levels, and their sort of anxiety, depression scales, and so on. So we did a very thorough exam of about 500 to 700 people. We did a very extensive evaluation using both mobile monitoring and stationary monitoring to look at the levels of air pollution in the area. Then we planted trees where the levels of pollution were the highest, around on the sides of the freeways, highways, right-of-ways, but we also planted around businesses and people's homes. In total, we planted about 8,000 trees, and these were not small trees that would take 20, 30 years to grow. Some of them were very large. Some of their root balls exceeded the size of a small car. And so after we put in the ground 8,000 trees and shrubs, we went back again and looked at the same health indices that we acquired before the trees were put in. We went back and measured the levels of air pollution again. And so what we found was in the places there where we put greenery and trees, that after a year of putting the greenness there was a decrease in the levels of inflammation in the residents of this area. And that is important because inflammation is what we call the ground soil on which, you get increased risk of cardiovascular disease, you get a risk of cancer, asthma, arthritis. Most of chronic diseases are fed in by this low-level inflammation. What we found was that there was, about almost 20% decrease in the level of this marker, which we called C-reactive protein, or CRP. And this has been studied for a long time as a key indicator of the inflammatory state of a person, and also as a predictor of your future risk for heart disease. So from the levels that were decreased by putting greenness, we could estimate that within that community, there would be a 10 to 15% risk reduction in the rates of heart attacks.
Wow. In 1 year?
In 1 year.
So should we all just go out and put more trees in our backyard? That's incredible.
No,
Does exercise deliver that kind of change?
It is of the same magnitude. The effect of that, the trees is about the same magnitude as that of moderate exercise at least 5 days a week. So that also decreases your levels of CRP to the same extent. So it's a really, I would say, significantly dramatic fact that, that within a year you could see that. And we do not yet know whether this is entirely because of a decrease in air pollution or there are other factors contributing to this benefit. Sometimes when we go to people's homes and you say, we want to plant trees next to your house, and then they see the neighborhood is much more pleasant. There are hundreds of trees lined up the freeway where there was just a barren wall. It just makes people feel better, and they just, and their symptoms improve. So we have to figure out whether this is real. So we will keep measuring these things for the next 5 years. Luckily, we got funded by the National Institutes of Health again, so that we will be doing this for the next 5 years. In terms of planting trees, yes, you cannot go wrong if you plant trees, except there are certain problems. For example, in cities, when we plant trees, usually people plant trees from both sides of a busy road, right? And they plant them in what we call lollipop configuration. Now, if you have these lollipop trees, they actually collect the air pollution that's emitted by tailpipe emissions in the understory of those trees. So you end up making things worse. And so we have to be careful in what configurations the trees are planted. If you plant a lot of trees in a neighborhood and all of them are male trees, the pollen goes up so much, the spores go up so much that you get more asthma and allergies in the area. So we took sort of care to plant only female trees so that we would not increase the incidence of asthma and allergies in the neighborhood.
I think you had also, talked about planting certain types of trees and varieties. So talk a little bit about what that looks like.
Yeah, so what we did, because there were a whole range of studies showing that the evergreens are much more efficient in removing air pollutants than deciduous trees. They have long, sticky needles, and the pollutants simply just stick to these needles. So there is a benefit that exceeds far more than the large-leafed deciduous trees. So we planted mostly evergreen trees, particularly around freeways. But in homes and in some of the park plantings, we use deciduous trees. That's number one. Number two, we planted many different species. That no particular species of cultivar was more than 10% of the total planting, because I think it's important to maintain biodiversity. The third thing is that in order for us to maintain or increase biodiversity in that area where we planted the trees, and incidentally, we are measuring biodiversity in the places where we planted trees, we want to make sure the spaces were kind of contiguous. So if there are bugs and critters and other wildlife, they could actually go from one green space to another. If you make very, very fragmented green spaces, it doesn't confer as much benefit as if you have a contiguous green space, so that there would be much greater biodiversity.
I think I read somewhere that the Nature Conservancy was a partner for you all, and having worked there many decades ago now, the contiguous corridor approach certainly helps biodiversity thrive in those regions as well, creating those corridors. So sounds very familiar to me.
Yeah, Nature Conservancy was a partner when we initially started doing the project. It was just a pipe dream because, we thought in order for us to do a reasonable experiment, increase greenness in the neighborhood, we'd have to plant very large trees. They were going to be very expensive. And so we went to the Nature Conservancy and said, we don't even know whether this is feasible, but we are going to need a lot of money to be able to plant 8,000 large trees. And we estimated that would cost somewhere around $8 million to just plant these trees. Yeah. So the Nature Conservancy did a global fundraising campaign for us and got us the funding to do the work.
That's fantastic. I think in our work, and we plant the most trees in response to disaster as well, larger trees, not as big as you all are planting, but certainly 2-year-old or larger trees into the environment, just for the effect that they'll have and the ability to survive over the long haul too. So, for that individual consumer or even some of our affiliates who are out there in smaller markets, my sense is your experiment calls for the bigger trees, but trees in the ground is actually the most important part. And then the variety, does that include shrubs and other greenery? And any guidance on how that plays?
So we would deliberate in choosing a combination. There were some shrubs and small understory trees. Next to the freeway, we actually did what we call layered planting. So the front row trees, bushes are very small. After that, followed by second tier, mid-sized trees and bushes, and the back were the really tall trees. So that we created a gradient over which the air pollution coming out from the tailpipes of the cars could be gradually eased off from the neighborhood and not sort of accumulate in the understory. So small bushes, hedges, more than 4 to 6 feet make a big difference in collecting pollutants. And certainly there have been studies from Europe that have shown their efficacy. Vines make a big difference, adding to the biodiversity. And then the little shrubs and ground covers. The ground cover is very good in maintaining biodiversity. And so what we are doing is we are using all of these. So these, I think the ground covers and understory things, we're not counting as trees, but we are still planting them to be able to look at what's happening to the biodiversity, because there is this whole idea that the reason that trees and plants and shrubs benefit human health is because they contain a lot of microorganisms, they contain different types of life, and we exposed to all this biodiversity, what we call them antigens. We expose to different types of bacteria, virus, fungus, spores, and these educate our immune system to make us more resilient and resistant to disease. So children who live in very clean environments and they wash their hands 3 times a day have much higher rates of asthma and allergies than kids who brought up in farms and play with animals and dirt and are outside. It's because their immune system is more educated.
It's sort of a natural vaccine, the same concepts, right, of helping to support developing an immune response rather than just being exposed and reactive.
Yes. So one hypothesis that they're working on is the air pollution hypothesis. The other is the biodiversity hypothesis.
Interesting. Well, I just think it's incredible what you have shown us, and I'm excited to think about across the Keep America Beautiful network as we plant trees in communities, and we have really state-of-the-art tree planting programs. How do we start to incorporate this learning into our work and strengthen the health benefit by taking some of the learnings that you've seen and getting them, into practical use in communities where we serve? So, Dr. Bhatnagar, thank you so much for your time today. And as we close out, I wonder, what are your hopes for the research moving forward? What's the future of this project?
Yes, so 2 things. We would want to continue studying this area and working on this project for another 5 years. We expect that as the trees grow, we will be able to track increasingly larger effect sizes over the years. So we would follow this. The next thing we're doing is we're trying to do small parts of this project in different areas. For instance, one of the things that trees do is to decrease heat in urban environments so they can provide shade. So what we are doing is planting a small microforest in downtown Louisville to be able to see whether we could change heat in a small area. So as in the Green Heart Project and looking at the lessons we've learned from there, we are first measuring the levels of temperature and humidity and pollution in the small quarter of a block right in the middle of downtown. And then we would plant a very dense thicket of trees so that we create like a microforest and see how much difference did it make to temperature and so on. So we want to do this. We want to also, if possible, do similar projects in other cities so that we would have much greater confidence in the results that we have accumulated so far.
Well, wonderful. I look forward to staying in touch and tracking that work with you and having you back as progress and new information comes forward. Thank you so much for your contributions to this important topic and for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Jenny.
Thank you for joining us today on Do Beautiful Things. I hope today's conversation has given you a new perspective on the importance of preserving our environment and the incredible power of trees, even in your own backyard. At Keep America Beautiful, we're on a mission to green and clean every corner of the country by July 4, 2026, the country's 250th birthday, ensuring that everyone has a healthy, safe, and beautiful place to live. And we invite you to join us. We're calling this the Greatest American Cleanup, and you can help by picking up 25 billion pieces of litter and helping us make 25,000 communities even more beautiful. We're not going to ask you to pick up all 25 billion pieces of litter. In fact, if you could pick up just 250 for the country's 250th birthday, and if every other American did the same, we would pick it all up. So visit kab.org to learn how you can get involved. Until next time, take care, stay informed, and let's keep doing beautiful things together. See you in the next episode.